champions. But a quality champion cannot exist or survive unless senior management is committed to a total quality process. What is a quality champion? My co-author, Winnie Schaefer, and I created this term several years ago because we found that the most important step in creating customer-focused quality was to encourage your employees to champion the quality process. Thus, we created the term quality champion. Winnie and I define the term champion as a person who is the first to speak out, the first person to take risk. A champion is a person who has the courage to fight the bureaucracy when it stands in the way of satisfying the customer. A champion is someone who believes in their convictions and stands up to the naysayers and others in the company who try to preserve the status quo. A champion is committed to total quality. I can guarantee you that every organization represented in this room, regardless of your gross sales, regardless of your product or service, regardless of the number of people you employ, every organization here has someone who wants to assume the role of championing quality in your company. The key is for you and your senior managers to create an environment that fosters quality champions. In our book, Winnie and I share the story of Gordon McKenzie, a quality champion at Ford Motor Company, who took a demotion to manage the rejuvenation of Ford's Lincoln Mercury division. McKenzie was a great cheerleader and boosted employee morale. He tried to acknowledge the good works of his employees instead of criticizing them for their mistakes. According to Don Peterson, the former chairman of Ford Motor Company, who hired Gordon McKenzie for this job, it was McKenzie's positive attitude and spirit of teamwork that was responsible for the Lincoln Mercury recovery. How do you foster such an environment in your company? The answer to this question has three parts. First, you must encourage your employees to take risk. I'm talking about the kinds of risks that save the day for your customers. I'm talking about making heroes instead of martyrs out of your people whenever they change the rules or even break the rules in order to satisfy a customer. Here's an example of how a business successfully applied Rules 1 and 2. One evening, while eating dinner at a restaurant in Santa Barbara, California, with my family, my 7-year-old daughter requested vanilla ice cream for dessert. The waiter said they had no vanilla ice cream, but if we could wait just a few minutes, he would send his assistant next door to the Haagen-Dazs ice cream store, and he would get a quart of vanilla ice cream. Would that be enough? Would we mind waiting a few minutes? In the meantime, he gave my daughter a very generous piece of chocolate cake. I even ate some of it. Well, the ice cream was worth the wait, and needless to say, we recommended this restaurant many, many times. By the way, they now carry vanilla ice cream on their dessert menu. Not only did our waiter break the rules, but he also raised the quality standards for the restaurant. He championed the quality process. The second way to create quality champions in your company is to examine every policy and procedure that gets in the way of employee performance, and then get rid of those rules and policies because they are costing you customers and lost revenue. I can't begin to count the number of ridiculous rules, policies, and procedures I've encountered that prohibit, restrict, or deter employees from satisfying their customers. Most companies think they need volumes of rules and procedures to ensure their employees get it right the first time. However, most rules and policies and procedures have just the opposite effect. They restrict your employees from satisfying the customer. And furthermore, these same rules and policies discourage your employees from even trying to satisfy their customers. It creates a lose-lose proposition. Nobody wins. Take the bad example of the Sears Roebuck Company. For years, Sears was the respected world leader among all retail stores. Today, Sears is struggling to maintain its once loyal customer base. The problem, as I see it from a customer perspective, is three things. First, Sears ignored its price-conscious, customer-oriented competition. Retail giants, including Walmart and Kmart, quietly crept up on Sears and hired customer-friendly employees who were knowledgeable about their products. Secondly, Sears replaced its aging workforce with younger, less knowledgeable employees who didn't know as much about Craftsman brand tools or the Kenmore refrigerators. Thus, the adult shopper was less likely to trust the judgment of younger people who were poorly trained and unable to answer basic questions about the benefits of buying a Sears product instead of a competitor's product. Thirdly, Sears allowed the appearance of its stores to look outdated and uninviting. While Sears was spending its money acquiring new businesses in the financial or the real estate and other non-retail markets, it did not have the necessary cash to upgrade its retail stores. The competition took full advantage of this mistake, and as a result, Sears is no longer revered as the #1 retailer in the minds of American consumers. If you want to create quality champions in your organization, champions who will inspire other employees to exceed their customers' expectations on a consistent basis, then burn your policy manuals and rule book and start anew. Nordstrom, the successful retail operation headquartered in Seattle, Washington, did exactly this. Their management adopted one rule for employees: use common sense and do what is in the best interest of the customer and your store. Let your employees think for themselves. Empower them to succeed. I've never met a single employee who, when asked a question by a customer, stopped to consult the employee rule book or company policy manual. No, instead the employee used their common sense and did whatever he thought was in the best interest of the company and the customer. And yet, we handcuff our employees and we treat them like children. And then we expect them to be peak performers and quality champions. It's ludicrous. But I think there is a deeper issue here, and that issue is trust. I think we need to ask ourselves, do we really trust our people? If you don't trust your people, then of course you will need volumes of rules for your employees to enforce. But if you tell me that you do trust your employees, that they are good, decent, honest, hardworking men and women who exercise good judgment and practice the core values and virtues of the company, then I must ask you, why don't you let them use their brains and talents on the job? Why not empower them to do whatever it takes to satisfy their customers? Why not trust them to succeed? Did you ever wonder how your employees get to work? Think about this for a moment. It's a rather humorous scenario. First, we hire people to work for us, which means they must meet our quality standards, correct? Then, without giving the matter a second thought, we expect them to awake each morning, get showered and shaved and dressed, and eat breakfast, take their children to school, and somehow find their way to the office on time. Let me ask you, how many rules and procedures do you have in your employee handbook concerning all of this pre-work preparation and grooming? I hope the answer is none. And yet, don't the overwhelming majority of your employees arrive at work on time and properly dressed? Don't they get their kids dressed and off to school as well? So why is it that once they arrive at work, we tie their hands behind the backs with restrictive rules and procedures that prevent them from serving their internal and external customers? And there is still one more question I must ask of you. If your people are not trained to use their brains and talents, why not? A manager's primary job is to grow his or her people. I can always tell whether or not a company is quality driven by the number of managers who are mentoring employees and grooming employees to rise up through the ranks in an organization. This is the case at Federal Express, Disney, Motorola, and AT&T. Let me encourage you to create quality champions by re-examining your rules, strip away any rules that make it difficult for the customer to do business with you. Return policies, check cashing regulations, credit reports, and unnecessary paperwork are all examples of customer frustration. The third way to create quality champions in your company is to reward and recognize the efforts of people who are making a difference. It's not enough to encourage change and burn the rule book. You must formally and informally recognize people for their efforts. Employee anniversaries, birthday celebrations, weddings, the birth of a child, and other major occasions in the life of your employees should be acknowledged and celebrated. Make your company part of the employee's family. This endears the company to the employee and encourages longevity. The outstanding companies, and there are many represented here today, the outstanding companies welcome the opportunity to celebrate the achievements and efforts of their quality champions. Their managers look for the small wins and shower public praise on their top performers. This is the way you encourage your people to excel and take risks. This is how you grow people and create a quality organization internally. This leads me to rule number 3, which is based on the golden rule. Rule 3, you must honor your words and promises to your customers and employees. In my first book, The Spirit of Service, I wrote that every successful company must master the 3 R's. They are reputation, reliability, and relationships. As Winnie Schaefer and I began researching our new book, we realized that the 3 R's were still relevant and, in fact, a cornerstone to creating a customer-focused, quality-driven company. Fleetwood Enterprises of Riverside, California, which manufactures mobile homes and recreational vehicles, practices the 3 R's. It is a company that is built on tradition, but maintains its reputation through its quality products and its positive relationships with its customers and employees. In closing, let me share with you an example of how a company can achieve quality by applying my 3 rules of quality and focusing on the human side of quality. My example is the story of the Cadillac Motor Car division of General Motors. Cadillac was built on a legacy of superior craftsmanship and unsurpassed quality. Then, in the 1980s, Cadillac appeared to lose its touch. Radical redesign, changes coupled with a rash of stringent emission standards and fuel economy requirements caught Cadillac and other American makers off guard. For the first time in its proud history, Cadillac failed to meet its customers' expectations. Its image was in jeopardy. Other luxury car makers took advantage of Cadillac's stumble. and pounced on its market share with devastating results. The company was out of touch with its customers, and its cars were faulted for their clumsy design, poor mileage, and inferior quality. In 1985, after 6 years of drifting and searching for answers, Cadillac turned to a strategy that transformed its culture through quality and customer satisfaction. Cadillac began to examine its culture and how it communicated its values to its customers and employees. In the process of this self-examination, Cadillac found that it wasn't honoring its promises to employees and customers. Management responded by re-examining its customer relationships, creating new design teams, starting quality circles, empowering employees to make major design changes, and listening to the needs and suggestions of its customers through focus group sessions. At the same time, Cadillac analyzed its reputation, reliability, and relationships at all levels and decided to reinvent the way it treated employees and customers, as well as its product development and quality processes. Cadillac found that by putting the emphasis on its people, by allowing them to offer suggestions for quality improvement, by diffusing the issues of labor versus management, by recognizing the customer and building employee pride and self-esteem, by doing all these things, the company's productivity and quality increased. On the other hand, when the emphasis was placed on increasing company profits and haggling over the percentages, both the customers and employees lost focus. In turn, quality declined. So Cadillac went back to the drawing board and started to burn the rule book and allow employees and customers to have some say. 5 years later, Cadillac's persistence paid off. Cadillac's transformation through its people, systems, processes, and products earned Cadillac the 1990 Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, the most prestigious quality award in the United States. How did Cadillac transform its culture and make such a dramatic turnaround? The story is one of intrigue because Cadillac uncharacteristically went about its transformation without much fanfare. In fact, auto industry studies, including the respected J.D. Power and Associates survey, as well as several automotive industry publications, painted a bleak picture for Cadillac from 1981 to 1985. While Cadillac dealers were rated above average by their customers, Cadillac's products problems abounded. Their fit and finish work was lackluster, quality problems surfaced, and their product design was criticized by loyal Cadillac customers. When the 1990 Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award announcement came, it was a pleasant shock, surprising to many General Motors employees. But there was no mistake. As Baldrige insiders told me, it is virtually impossible to win this award without earning it. There are too many checks and balances along the way. All the things Cadillac did to restore their quality reputation, they did in such a way that caught the attention of car buyers around the world, as well as a number of quality award examiners. They made a very convincing argument for their continuous improvement processes and commitment to quality and service. Ironically, that's exactly what Cadillac did in a very unconventional way. Quietly, Cadillac set out in 1987 to reorganize itself into a single business unit. They added engineering and manufacturing to its marketing responsibilities. This reorganization accomplished several strategic objectives. First, it moved manufacturing and engineering closer to the customer. Secondly, it gave the people of Cadillac cradle-to-grave ownership of their success, of of their products, and it reinforced in Cadillac employees their commitment to build the world's finest automobile. Today, Cadillac continues to make improvements and uphold its quality reputation. Is the company perfect? No. In fact, Cadillac's management will tell you they still have a long way to go. Each year, the quality bar is raised higher and higher because their customers expect it and demand more. For example, at the dealership level, Cadillac is working to train its sales staff and customer service employees to be more customer-oriented and friendly. The old way of selling cars by pressuring the prospective car buyer and applying hard sell tactics is no longer acceptable. This requires training salespersons to think like the customer and be less aggressive. America's great humorist Will Rogers once quipped, "Even if you are on the right track, you'll still get run over if you're standing still." I hope my remarks today will help your company keep moving in the right direction so that your competition doesn't run past you, even if you are on the right track. One only needs to compare the profitability of the Fortune 500 some 5 years ago to that group today to understand and appreciate how the cost of poor quality, mediocre service, and a lack of empowerment can stifle a business and a nation. The ultimate judge as to whether or not your quality processes are succeeding or failing is your customer. And this is why it's important to care about quality and help your company make that transition from being operations-driven to customer-focused. Customers are the lifeblood of every business and government agency. Without customers, your organization has no meaningful reason to exist. In 1951, Dr. Peter Drucker, one of the great management professors of our time, wrote in his first book entitled The Practice of Management, "The primary goal of every business is the acquisition and maintenance of our customers." I believe some 43 years later that Dr. Drucker's message is more valid than ever before. Despite the newspaper headlines and the media coverage, I believe our world still operates on a few basic truths and values. Although you and I come from different cultures and live under different laws and governments, we're very much alike. We all want to be happy. We all want the best for our children and ourselves. We yearn to make a difference and leave a legacy that will cause society to remember us for the good we contributed. I think this is why striving for quality is so important. It is a reflection of ourselves and our self-worth. In closing, I hope my 5 steps for creating customer-focused quality and the 3 R's we just discussed, the 3 rules that we just discussed, will inspire you to rethink the importance of your human talent and encourage you to focus on the human side of quality. I wish you every success as you continue on your quest to champion quality in your company, and I look forward to hearing about your successes at future meetings like this one. Thank you.
We now start our last question and answer demonstrative session. We'd like to remind you to please pose your questions in a brief way in order to have more access. We still had a question with one of our computers, people in Paraguay. Wouldn't a standardization of policies and procedures create a dependency of the developing countries?
I think the standardization of policy and procedures is going to be greatly impacted depending on where your work environment, where you're located. Obviously, the Disney company has proven that in a negative way, unfortunately. Very successful in the United States, very successful in Japan, but when they opened Euro Disney in France, they, I think, violated so many of the traditions and procedures that were that were practiced by the French people, and it did not sit well with the French people. So yes, I think you have to look at the standards, the policies and procedures in a country and adapt. As the old expression goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Just to comment on that same subject, as Deming and others have pointed out, variability is the enemy of quality. Really, when we try to document processes and so forth, we're trying to come up with the best way to do a particular task or process to eliminate human variability, which ultimately affects our customers. We see right now ISO 9000, standards for world trade. We're requesting that all companies who are involved in world trade actually have documented procedures. But when the designers of these processes, or the ISO, set it up, they did not want to affect countrywide autonomy. So really the enforcement of these really become part of each country's culture.
Gracias. La siguiente pregunta viene de Catepec.
Comes from Catepec, the state of Mexico. Is somebody from the Superior Technological Institute? With regards to a human aspect, how can you interpret and manage the different syndicates?
By syndicates, I assume that people are talking about
que la gente está hablando
unions.
Unions.
Uniones.
First of all, if we've learned anything in the United States with respect to the relationship between management and unions or syndicates, we have learned that it is a partnership. One of the great success stories in the 80s and 90s has been the willingness of unions and auto manufacturer management to work together as a team to achieve total quality. Without that partnership, it would not be possible. So unions have a very significant role to play, but they also need to understand that they're a partner in the process and not the enemy.
And really that is supported in the state of California. Every time we implement on a company site the TQM process, the advice always is we want a union representative on the steering committee. He has to really, like everybody else, be brought up to date with what we're trying to do, and we need his contributions as far as work rules and so forth are concerned.
Gracias de Tepepac.
Thank you. From Tepeca, we get a call from the administration school. Go ahead. ¿Cómo?
Bueno,
No le oímos. ¿Me puede decir otra vez la...?
¿Cuáles serían algunas de las principales estrategias?
What would it be the basic strategies? What would be the strategy to follow when you have a country with too many unions?
That's a difficult question. That's a difficult question. But really what we're talking about here is company by company implementation of TQM. And really, why make a complex problem when we can break it down into components? How many unions are you interfacing in the company where you as a leader are trying to implement the TQM? It really becomes quite manageable.
The other aspect of that question, or the other dimension to that question, is this. Don't the unions want the same results that management wants? That is, more work for the employees, higher wages, and steady work jobs. The unions want the same things that management wants. It's a matter of bringing them together, talking, working out their differences. And I know that sounds simplistic, but frankly, it's a simple process. You have to sit down and talk to each other.
The next question comes from Guadalajara, the University of Guadalajara. Good afternoon. I'd like to ask you, what would you ask the high-level executives in the university in order to implement TQM when you have all types of clients and there are conflicting interests coming from all types of clients?
This program today comes from San Diego State University, which is probably a very good example of your question. In the United States, we have the same structure in our universities that I'm sure you have in your country. We have an administration, we have a faculty, we have a student population. All of these different interest groups have specific wants and needs. I'm going to refer to George's previous answer because I think he said it so well when he suggested you have to define the vision of the organization, what it is we stand for, and then look at those issues that you can bring people together on so that you can begin to achieve the beginning steps of quality. Don't overcomplicate the process. Everybody wants to be part of a successful organization.
You know, there's two factors involved here. One of them is internal to the university itself, and the other is for the student body themselves. Really, these days, nobody should graduate from a college that doesn't have some kind of training in TQM concepts. And number two, there should be internal overtures and efforts made by the heads of universities to install a program where they bring together the various colleges of a university, and by consensus and thinking, they decide how they're going to implement the TQM process at their spot.
We have another question from Guadalajara. This is a Federal Electric Commission. Go ahead. Is it a more favorable working environment when you inspect, even though there are some errors in the statistics?
Take a look at the various countries in the world. Take a look at Germany. Germany inspected. Inspecting just adds cost. It does not provide in prevention. Even from a business standpoint, when we are going through our business processes and we have to have 6 people sign a purchase order, in a way that's an inspection too. Really what we're trying to get away from is change the concept completely, that the operator is responsible for the quality of the work, that we don't need to develop an adversarial relationship with a third party to look over their shoulders and inspect something. It's fundamental to the total quality program that we develop that concept and get rid of inspection.
From Ecuador, we have a question from the bank. How would you implement total quality and re-engineering, and how would you prevent the impact, the social impact on the employees?
Maybe I could talk about that one a little bit. When we talk about productivity improvements, we're talking about getting more for less. Yes, it does have there could be an impact as far as employees are concerned. Many companies have answers to this, but in different ways. For example, in some companies, they guarantee that nobody will lose their job as long due to a TQM process. That really the strategy that we're trying to unfold is we want more work, not less work. By being more competitive, then we can hire more employees, even though we're getting more for less. So many companies have developed a strategy, but you have to be upfront with people, and really during the training program, you deal with these kind of issues, so everybody feels comfortable in moving the company ahead.
I think also, Armando, that quality, you have to remember, begins with people. And as George suggests, if we are going to include people in the quality process, then many of those concerns, I think, will be resolved at the initial stages of your total quality process. There's no question that people are concerned about their jobs anytime you introduce change. So it's very important to involve people in the quality process from the beginning, and that way many of their fears will be taken care of or resolved.
The next question comes from via phone from Asunción in Paraguay, and somebody from the Catholic University. How do you maintain a TQM in a company which has a high turnover or change within management or even in employees within the interior?
I think McDonald's, the fast food restaurant here in